Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show, which is presented to you by Power Planter Earth Augers, the official digging tool to find the right size for your digging project. Visit powerplanter.com. Now here are your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. Holly, let's go to the hotline and bring in a very popular gardener that many people across the country are very familiar with.
Nationally known gardening expert, TV radio show host, author and columnist Melinda Myers has over 30 years of horticultural experience and has written over 20 gardening books. Nationally syndicated Melissa's Garden Moment program, which airs on 150 TV and radio stations throughout the U.S. Melinda also hosts the internationally distributed Great Courses How to Grow Anything DVD series, including the latest Food Gardening for Everyone DVD set. She appears regularly as a guest expert on national and local television and radio shows. Welcome to the program, Melinda.
Thanks. It's always great to chat with you, too.
Well, 30 years of experience. Is there questions that you still don't have answers to? I don't want to put you on the spot, but do people come up with you and you're like, I really don't know the answer to that?
Oh, you bet. One of the wonderful things about gardening, whether you're doing it as a hobby or a profession, and I do both, it's what I do for a living, but it's also my passion, is I learn something new every day. New plants, new insect pests we discover, new beneficial insects, new ways of doing things, or old ways being brought back and modernized a bit. So I feel like I learn something new every day.
Well, we're glad that we've got you on the program and not only to enlighten Holly and myself, but all of our listeners from across the country and all of our stations. We'll start with this. Pollinators are very important, and we notice this each year. They get more important. What are some annuals and perennial flowers that you use in your garden or would encourage people to use to attract those beneficial pollinators into your property?
You know, there's so many to choose from. I love annual zinnias. They're easy. You can start them from seed and get blooms, so if you're trying to stretch your plant budget. One of my favorites is Blue Horizon Ageratum. You may know the shorter ones of floss flower ageratum. These grow 20 inches tall, so they blend nicely with perennials. I find hummingbirds, butterflies, and bees coming to visit those flowers. I love the Cuphea, C-U-P-H-E-A. It attracts the hummingbirds, and I love to have pots near my window so I can watch and see them come to visit. Pentas, P-E-N-T-A-S, butterflies, love that one as well as the bee. The Mexican sunflower, bright orange flowers, a tall plant, so it really adds a lot of oomph to the garden. Perennial-wise, boy, there's so many to choose from. Phlox is a wonderful fragrant, good for cut flowers. The hummingbirds, bees, and butterflies love it. Bee balm, as the name implies. The bees love that one. And of course we have our coneflowers and rudbeckias and so many different plants to choose from. And they all add beauty. So we get to enjoy their beauty while we're inviting the pollinators and supporting them because they're going to help pollinate our food crops and our flowers so that we have more flowers, and a lot of our medicines come from flowers, and food to eat, of course.
And it's always nice to go to somebody's backyard that understands how flowers work because you're just hit with this aroma of fragrance.
You bet.
Now, with so many different varieties that can be grown in many different areas, why are native plants important to be grown no matter where you are?
You know, natives have really come back into vogue. You know, it's trending, and it's a very positive thing because our native plants evolved with those insects, those pollinators, and birds that we're trying to attract to our garden, and it helps support our gardening efforts. But like any plant, whether you're growing a cultivated or a native plant, always make sure it fits in the space and the growing conditions. You know, we all have interesting growing conditions. In the city, I lived in the city on a small space for 26 years and had a huge street tree. I put in a couple smaller trees, so my garden became pretty shady over time. So I had to make sure I picked plants that could tolerate those conditions. Also, some of the natives are very aggressive. You know, if you've planted one coneflower, you'll have many. Doesn't mean you shouldn't do it, just be prepared. But others, like Culver's root, is a little more tame and stays put. And so trying to find the plants that really work well in your design, the space available and growing conditions, is really important. And natives help give those added benefits. Deep roots, so they create channels in our heavy clay soils. For those in heavy clay soil, as those old roots die, they add organic matter, so important in clay soils and sandy soils. They help slow water as it runs off our roofs and our patios, and it catches it and it channels it down to our groundwater, and along the way it cleans out some of those impurities. So not only is it good for our pollinators, it's good for the environment, and it really helps us manage stormwater, which is so important across the country as we've paved more areas, and we're really getting those floods, we're getting those big downpours followed by drought. So they can do a lot of good things for us beyond helping support pollinators.
Yeah, and it helps support those pollinators, and also with those supportive of pollinators, there's bad bugs that good bugs live in those native plants that control those bad bugs that we don't want in our gardens too.
You bet. A lot of the beneficial insects that we see, and sometimes they scare people, but really they're doing some good things for us, as you mentioned, controlling the bad guys.
So due to this pandemic that we have all found ourselves in, many apartment condo residents will be growing vegetables in containers, some of them for the very first time. What are some great container growing tips that you can offer all of us?
You know, I was a small space gardener, as I mentioned, for probably 26 years, and I grew everything I could in containers. And I think if you've got a big enough pot and you're willing to water them and take care of them, you can grow just about anything. Fortunately, there are lots of new compact varieties now. So a couple things to start with. Pick a container with drainage holes or a self-watering pot. And the reason for the drainage holes is even if you can water perfectly, nature's going to come along and decide when it's going to water your container. So the drainage holes allow that excess water to drain. Find a quality potting mix that works for you, and they all vary, and we all have different gardening styles. So you're going to want something that holds moisture but drains well so that your plants can grow and thrive. You're going to want to fertilize properly. I'm a low-maintenance gardener, and I like to do a lot of gardening, so the more efficient I can be, the more gardening I can do. So I use a slow-release, low-nitrogen fertilizer. I apply it in the spring at planting, and then maybe if needed midsummer, but I let my garden be the guide, because if it's a hot summer and I've crammed too many plants in the pot, I probably do need to fertilize mid-season. If I've used a larger container and we haven't had as much rain and it hasn't been as hot, then I probably don't need that mid-season fertilizer. Those with longer seasons are definitely going to need it. So let your plants be the guide as opposed to, it's time to fertilize by the calendar. So we've got it watered. We're checking daily for watering, though there's some wonderful products you can add to the soil to help extend. I'm not a fan so much of the gels. They haven't really proved to be successful, but compost, organic material, some of those things do help hold the moisture. Watering thoroughly, checking daily, and water is needed, fertilizing at start, using a slow release. And then grow some of those compact varieties and just do it. You're going to be amazed at the good results you get. And even the pollinators will come to your patio and balcony if you put the right flowers in your pots.
What would you recommend for type of mulch with using containers in this situation?
You know, and that's a great point because so many people overlook mulching the soil when you do a pot. And usually you only need it right at the beginning because mulch conserves moisture, suppresses weeds, and as it breaks down, improves the soil. But usually with containers, it's a smaller amount to do and that smaller texture needed. I like to use things I find in my yard. Evergreen needles, I think, are very beautiful. You can also use cocoa bean shells as long as you don't have a dog that likes to eat chocolate because chocolate's poisonous for those dogs. I'm not the biggest fan of stone, but stone mulch and decorative mulch is often used by others. It tends to hold the heat and cool off fast, so I tend to stick with organic mulches. Sometimes a very twice shredded bark is also good. As long as you keep it on the soil surface, you don't have to worry about nitrogen being tied up as well. And as soon as those plants start growing, they're going to fill in. Now, many people pack a lot of plants in their containers, so there's not much room for mulch. They're going to be watering and fertilizing more often than those of us that maybe give a little more room for the plants to grow. So our display won't be as knock your socks off at planting, but it'll catch up quickly and require a little bit less maintenance.
So many people think that birds can cause damage to their especially their edibles in their garden. Why are birds beneficial to the garden?
You know, great question. I just planted my peas last weekend, and I did cover them because they do like the seeds. But songbirds, I think it's like 85% of songbirds eat insect pests. Hummingbirds are pollinators, but I'll watch the hummingbirds visit my feeder, and they like to sit on my weeping lilac, and I'll watch them eat the aphids off of that and my honeysuckle vine. And so they're helping control the pest. I give them a little sugar water, and they take care of a lot of pests for me. Other songbirds coming in are doing the same thing. And one of the nice things is we can grow a landscape that feeds them. So you don't even need to put feeders out, so you'll increase the number and diversity. But by inviting them in, maybe with a bird bath, maybe a few bird houses, or plants in your landscape, you're going to bring them in and watch them devour a lot of the problem pests. Then if you are concerned about them eating or damaging your pest, I use row cover, floating row cover. It lets air, light, and water through. It keeps a lot of the insect pests like cabbage worms from damaging my plants, but it also protects my young seeds and seedlings from the birds. As soon as those peas are up and growing, they'll be fine, but that row cover keeps them from digging up the seeds right after planting. So there are ways we can coexist and both benefit from our landscape, feeding the birds. They eat the insects. We get to enjoy the color and motion that they provide to the garden, which I think is a real big added benefit.
Well, Melinda, so much great information. We appreciate you taking time to join Holly, myself, and all of our listeners. How can our listeners find more about you? Where can they go on the web and get your books?
You bet. MelindaMyers.com is my website. We are doing daily Facebook posts as well, and you can access that through my website or Melinda Myers. We're trying to get information out to people to help them, projects that are affordable, that use products and seeds and plants that you probably already have in your home or can easily access. I think we all have an opportunity. As you mentioned, a lot of people are starting to garden for the first time, or maybe they have more time now because of the staying safer at home orders. And so we're trying to help them work out that green thumb a bit with some projects they can do, good for all ages, those with and without children, and just trying to keep people happy. So visit my website, melindamyers.com, and there's connections to audio and video tips, frequently asked questions, and also links to Facebook and YouTube and Pinterest and Instagram as well.
Well, Melinda, thank you very much for taking time out of your day and sharing the information with Holly and myself and all of our listeners.
Thank you, and thanks for the opportunity. Everyone stay safe and happy gardening.
Absolutely.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.